Viveca, welcome to the Louder Lawyer podcast. We just changed the name, by the way, today.
Oh, okay. From what? From louder
It,
to
it was
even louder?
it was the Get Louder podcast. Now it's the Louder Lawyer podcast.
Louder more. Okay.
No, Louder Lawyer.
Louder lawyer. Okay. So you're niching down. Cool.
Yeah. Well, we've been niched for a while, so now we're
Yep.
ultra niching.
Yep. Even
So, t-
more.
so Viveca, right? Am I saying that right?
Almost Viveca.
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 So, Viveca, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. It's well, for starters, that name is a tricky one. It's an older Swedish name, and I grew up in Sweden. And quite a few years ago, I came over to California, Southern California specifically. Wanted to get out of the dark, the cold, the rain, and so here I am in sunny Southern California, and heading into the ocean whenever I can, surfing, swimming, on, under, over the ocean. So that's kind of my thing, my meditation, if you will. And I came here and taught skiing for a few years, and then I decided I was going to go to law school, practice as a lawyer for about 8 years in estate planning at a firm here in San Diego, and took on some of the marketing projects for the law firm. And this was during a time when we were hitting some economic doldrums here in the States, '08, '09. And so I suggested we create a website, some marketing materials. We didn't really have much of that at the firm. The partner said, great, take it away. And let me tell you how much law school teaches us about marketing and business development. Zero. so so that was fun. Actually, I took it on, scaled back client interactions, and really enjoyed it. And so I was able to build some traction and some visibility, and absolutely fell in love with sort of creating connections and relationships. Even before you've had a chance to meet anybody face to face. So. Fell in love with that, and as the one of the older partners left the firm, I decided it was time for me to back up a bit, kind of reevaluate what I was doing with myself, my life, my career, and decided I was going to start a marketing agency. And I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. So there you go. That's my backstory. I haven't regretted it 1 minute. I love being on this side of the law. We're working with lawyers and law firms and sort of understanding some of the trepidation and some of the regulatory sensitivities that we have to be aware of when we're advertising or sort of positioning ourselves online. And mainly, I work with lawyers and law firms, sort of leveraging LinkedIn primarily, creating
Yeah,
their content. Yeah.
LinkedIn is a very powerful tool that I slept on for many years, and I, I didn't like it. Now I'm learning to like it. A lot of people sleep. I think it's going to be the next like Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, it changed a lot after the pandemic, especially. I mean, when law partners and associates who were asked to make some rain suddenly couldn't go out and get on the golf course or whatever they did to network, events. A lot of them turned to LinkedIn, and it was a natural pivot for them because what are you going to do? And they're certainly not at that point, at least, they weren't going to get on TikTok or Instagram. So the professional platform like LinkedIn made a whole lot of sense. So I actually had a lot of attorneys that I was working with and some larger firms during that time. But I think that's where we saw a shift. And I think we saw in terms of content too, we saw lawyers and the financial industry, individuals that were sort of independent, really sort of let their guard down and become more personal, more human in their expression. And I thought it was an awesome pivot. But I think that's sort of where we've gone since then. And so it does feel like it's a little bit more personable. That's for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
So there's many forms of marketing. What do you feel like you really specialize in?
I think the specialty. And it's funny when you say what I specialize in is more of sort of what I'm passionate about. When you're doing what you're passionate about, you forget all time and you forget that it's called work. But the two areas really that I have so much fun with, and I've heard good things, success from it, is really primarily content marketing and branding, and those sort of go hand in hand, right? It's sort of figuring out what makes somebody personal, their personality, their humanity first. And then we use that to position their legal expertise, but we do it with a flavor and a tone and a voice that really sets them apart because we have about 1.3 million attorneys in the US as of right now. So there is competition, but I try and dispel the whole notion of competition, if you will, because if you really find out what your story is and you figure out what your voice is and you have some help from somebody maybe like me from the outside that sort of digs in, then you have no competition, right? Because there's only one you with your story and your outlook, your voice. And that's sort of how, we have to think more about sort of in abundance uh,
Hmm.
rather than competition. So I'm trying to sort of dispel that whole notion of competition. That's a hard one for lawyers to
Yeah.
grapple with because we're so used to growing up with sort of looking left and right and being concerned about what everybody else is doing and are we keeping up? And it's sort of an exhausting process, honestly. So,
Yeah, a
so
lot. You
yeah,
find it like there's a lot of attorneys. They're very, um, they're great attorneys, but a
right,
great attorney is not a great marketer, and they sort of need that outside perspective, like
yeah,
someone like you, right? What?
yeah.
How do you feel like you're really able to cut the noise for them? Because I find a lot of attorneys, they they look down on social media a little bit and advertise it like they're above it. How do you cut through that?
Mhm. I think that happens pretty quickly when we have our first conversation. And I can't, and I'm not going to lie. I mean, having been a lawyer and been in the law field, that then instills a certain level of trust. So I sort of get my foot in the door that a little bit in that way. But I think just the conversation and what I initially say to them in terms of sort of dispelling the competition and figuring out who they are and how to position themselves, along with some case studies of how it's gone for others that I've worked with pretty quickly cuts through, any suspicions they might have of LinkedIn. And truthfully, I don't really equate LinkedIn with social media. And maybe that's kind of old school, but I think in terms of social media, I think more of sort of the visual, the kind of a younger crowd hanging out on Snapchat or Instagram or Pinterest, even or TikTok, whatever it is, and or Twitter, the latest greatest. So I just kind of I see LinkedIn as a way to just sort of position yourself and offer content that's valuable to your audience. That obviously presumes that you have a really good understanding of who your audience is, and you can pinpoint not just the simple demographics, but sort of the deeper psychological demographics of what their pain points are, their desires, their dreams, their aspirations. Is what I do for the clients that I work with, but it's what I help them when they're trying to appeal to their audience, depending on their practice area. So that's my long-winded answer to your short question.
It,
So,
is there an area in law that you feel does better on LinkedIn than maybe another?
traditionally there have been areas of law that are easier, such as transactional business law, mergers, acquisitions, where lawyers are sometimes trying to reach out, maybe not only directly to a potential client, but they're trying to build sort of high value referral partnerships. Personal injury has been one that typically was pretty hard to position on LinkedIn. Although these last few years, I've actually had a very um, pretty good shift in that as well, because that's sort of the personal injury attorneys. Those are the ones. I mean, you're not going to go out sort of in a blatant, hey, who's been in an accident, raise your hand on LinkedIn, right? Or criminal defense, for example. That's also another one that's really tricky, right? Hey, have you been accused of a crime? Yes, me. Well, no, nobody's going to raise their hand on LinkedIn and say, here I am, right? So sometimes they'll come into the DMs and sort of address privately. So those have been traditionally tricky. But for those groups that I work with, what we do there is we really focus on building referral relationships with other attorneys. And so that's where we roll out a lot of sort of stories, heartfelt stories, real, genuine stories of the success they've had with personal injury clients, for example. So those traditionally were hard ones, but we really need to rethink how we're positioning them on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Hmm. And do you also manage the LinkedIn account as well?
I manage it in terms of, I mean, sometimes I can use a scheduler, but what I prefer to do is to have the attorney, him or herself, actually do the post. And we'll brainstorm and we work together in a few different ways, depending on what their bandwidth is and resources and all that. But typically we'll get together at least twice a month, sometimes weekly, and we'll brainstorm through certain topics. And I'll give sort of a draft, we'll look at it, we'll update it a bit, and then I encourage them to post it. And then I always say, listen, you've got to set aside some time to watch that post for half an hour afterwards. Just check in for a few minutes, see what kind of comments you get there, because you don't want to be the one that sort of just shouts it out and then posts and ghosts and disappears, right? The whole purpose of LinkedIn is to build relationships. So you've got to be there. If you put something out there, then check in just for a few minutes within the hour of posting, and make sure that you acknowledge and respond to any comments. And that's just respectful, because
Mhm.
people have taken time out of their busy day to respond to your post. And so you need to acknowledge them and check in with them, and that's where you start building that relationship. And so I encourage within the hour, and then later in the evening when you have 5 minutes. So really, realistically, we're brainstorming the post, so that doesn't take much time for them to put it out. And then I'd say, if you can spend 15 minutes once, within the hour, and once again in the evening or late afternoon, and at least acknowledge and respond to the ones that have taken time to show you some love. So that's kind of what it's all about to me.
I love that, and it's very similar on other platforms as well, like Instagram. It's very sad to see when you go onto some of these pages and you have somebody comment, ask a question probably, and you either get no reply, or the reply is call the office if you have a problem, this or that. Is These are social platforms, right? And you
Right.
want people to feel heard, just like as if they were going to call you, you wouldn't dismiss them. You would
No.
want to engage with them a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's called social for a reason, and it's called the linked. And LinkedIn is called, you know, that way for a reason as well. I mean, we're looking to make links to connect, right? To be social. So
Exactly. And how do you feel about video? Like, I'm more of a video on the video marketing side of things. And you're more on the like the LinkedIn text heavy marketing side of things. Do you do video as well?
I don't do so much video unless, I mean, I do LinkedIn live events. Sometimes I coordinate that for my clients, but I do it myself. I'm doing one every other Friday. It's on a very light note. It's a Friday, and so I kind of wrap up the week with another attorney, and we sort of riff on some fun stuff. She's also a yoga teacher, and so we have that fun moment. It's about 15 minutes. But the LinkedIn live is, I mean, that's a live video. It's a very different thing than a recorded video, right? But what I do know is that LinkedIn is going to be favoring well done videos on this platform. They really have made it very clear for 2024 that the high quality videos, in short, sweet sound bites, 1 to 3 minutes or so, are going to be favored. And which means what that translates into is the algorithm favoring that and giving you better reach to a really good quality audience. So I mean, I feel good about video. I think that's it had its heyday in LinkedIn a few years ago, and then it sort of died down. But I think it's coming back now in a very different flavor. We know that LinkedIn live events and audio events are getting great reach. I mean, those are LinkedIn's own features. So of course they're gonna show us a whole bunch of love, from the algo for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And shout out to LinkedIn for finally doing that. Because I do video. I like to post videos, right? And I
Yep.
stopped because I was like, this is maybe not the right platform for a video. I tried doing the text, not really my strong suit. I'm happy to hear that they're going to start implementing video.
Yeah, I mean, I for sure, I think that they're gonna come back with video more and more, and it makes sense. I mean, video is, it's where we have that three dimensionality to our relationship, and just anything that personalizes the messaging or the outreach or the communications, I think is so much better than just kind of a one way, than waiting and going back and forth. So, there's a feature from mobile so far, only on mobile, on the LinkedIn app, where you can leave a voicemail up to 1 minute. And I encourage my clients to do that. If they want to check in on somebody, or they have sort of a thread, a conversation with a referral partner, for example, instead of just doing a text or sending them a message, get on the voicemail. And even the voice, along with the video, I think those two things give a different dimension. It really makes you stand out quite a bit. So I'm a big believer in both video and audio live.
Now,
Yeah.
you said you came from Sweden. Did you go from Sweden straight to San Diego?
Well, no, I didn't. Actually, interesting story. I came over from Sweden, and as I came into California, and I had planned on continuing school after I just graduated from high school in Sweden, and I was going to continue with college, and I was made aware of the fact that I'd been gone from California for many, many years, and so I had to pay out of state tuition, which was about 3 times as much as the tuition in state. So I said, okay, I'm going to work here a year, establish a residency, and then I can avoid that out of state tuition at a much higher fee. So I thought, well, what could be fun to work with, for a year or so while I'm waiting to establish that residency and avoid that higher fee? Well, I had skied competitively, so I thought, okay, I'm going to go teach skiing. Yeah, that'll be fun. So that was so much fun that year that it turned into 4 years. So, so yeah, I taught skiing for 4 years. I traveled, I rock climbed, I went back to Sweden during the summers. It was a pretty good life, and sort of what triggered my departure from teaching skiing was the Berlin Wall coming down. And when that came down, I was fascinated by the political consequences of that, having grown up in Europe. And I quickly discovered that my ski instructor, fellow colleagues and ski patrol weren't quite as fascinated with that. So I thought, okay, it's time to go back to school and exercise another part of my body, my brain. So yeah, I mean, I had fun. I loved teaching skiing, and I learned so much about standing in front of people and entertaining and educating and showing and coaching and encouraging. So those were great years. But I'm also happy that I had that pivot and I got that part in my system, and I still ski. We go up to Northern California at least once or twice a winter. So
Oh, nice.
that was
So,
the story. So it was not. It was a very indirect path to Southern California.
yeah,
So
it's the opposite of snow.
yeah,
What?
yeah.
So what triggered the path to become an attorney?
I was going to undergrad. I was political science major, and then I had a minor in law and society. And I actually went to audit a few classes at some of the local law schools here, and I loved the conversations and I love the challenge of it. It's known as being sort of the Socratic method, where you get cornered and you're not given an answer. You've got to think on your feet. You've got to think about how you're going to defend or argue something. And I was just taken by that. I thought it was so cool and so interesting. And I kind of like being cornered. I like having to think on my feet and trying to think my way out of situations. So that was sort of my initial, view of law. And then, of course, when you get into your first year of law school, you're just running scared the whole time. That was beyond fascination, but we all kind of survived somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. And what have been some of the challenges? So you stepped out of law, became a purely a marketer. Like what have been some of the challenges of being a marketer, especially in the beginning stages?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of misconceptions about what marketing or what I, more often refer to as business development is. And I thought it was just, you quickly put together some content, some images, some videos, and you just kind of slap it up there and see if it works. And I've since learned that it takes a lot more thought. I mean, I think it takes a lot of digging into sort of the foundations and so the inside of what makes a person human. What makes them tick, what are their dreams, and what are their pain points, what are their frustrations. And once you get into sort of digging in a little bit deeper than just sort of the visuals and the graphics and all that, I think that's where you really have an opportunity to make fantastic connections. And it was a learning curve. And I think when I started my small boutique agency, as I called it back then, over 10 years ago, I started off thinking, well, I was going to craft websites, web design, web development, and I hired a few folks. And here's the hard lesson I learned was, do not delegate and take on something that you don't have a thorough understanding of first. Then you can delegate. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. So I said, okay, well, I don't know anything about this. What I did know about was the psychology of connection and writing. And, we had to do some writing in law, in law school and afterwards. So I knew that was sort of my strong point to start with. And then the other stuff around marketing, business development, LinkedIn, especially, I kind of learned along the way. But I had to do some hard pivots, and it was some pretty steep learning curves because, like I mentioned, law school didn't teach you much about marketing or business development. So I think that's changing now. I'm really happy to see that, and sort of encouraging and promoting students to learn more about what it means to be in business and to have to wear several hats, especially if you're a solo practitioner or a small practitioner. You can't rely on the big budgets of big law firms.
Hmm.
So yeah.
What out of curiosity, what law school did you go to?
So I went to California Western School of Law.
Hmm.
Yep, downtown San Diego. I had thought about going into international law just because I grew up in Sweden and Italy, and I speak about four languages pretty fluently. So I thought, well, I'd probably end up on the East Coast. But then I thought, gosh, really, do I really want to end up in that weather? That was the cold and the dark and the rain that I was trying to get away from. And I fell in love with San Diego. I really did. So I said, I'm going to stay here on the West Coast. I ended up focusing my last year of law school. I went really deep on international securities regulation. And so that naturally would have taken me to the East Coast as well. But then I ended up doing estate planning and more transactional work. So, and then I met my husband, and here we are, happily in San Diego. So, yeah.
What I find, yeah, the reason I asked is for some reason a lot of clients I know went to school here like in downtown San Diego, and they
Uh-huh.
just become business owners. So I'm like, I don't know what it is about downtown San Diego and law school down here, but it just pumps out entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, we probably see that more these last, I mean, I'd say 5 to 10 years. You see a lot more what I call cross pollination between law and medicine, law and healthcare, law and policymaking, and law and business. So I see a lot more flexibility, and I love what I'm seeing. I mean, it's just like mind bending sometimes how people are using their law degree to practice in other areas and bringing those areas into law as well. It's not as discrete and categorized as it doesn't fit neatly into specific categories as it used to 10, 20 years ago and before then. So we're seeing a lot more flexibility and sort of dynamic, in law. I think that we've never, especially with technology the way it is now and all the generative AI tools that are out there and how we can sort of work together and collaborate in ways that we've never seen before. So that's a really cool thing. I don't know if it has to do with the geographical location of the law school, but I tend to think that downtown has a certain vibe for sure.
Yeah.
So
And now with LinkedIn starting to promote a little bit more videos, do you see yourself creating more video content?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I love video. I mean, I do walk the talk. I mean, I think the video gives us that three dimensionality that people yearn for because, it's one thing to text or see content, static content. It's a whole different thing to see the mannerisms, the tone of your voice, the excitement, everything that goes into, better than most, what goes into a video. It just gives a whole different perspective. And I think creates a much higher level of trust when you're trying to build rapport with somebody.
And so,
Do you
what's
agree
next
with that?
for what happened?
Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. 100% agree with video.
Yeah.
And I even think the combination, I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's the video for the visual lovers and then the text for the text lovers. People who love to read, you want to still give that to them. But the people
Right.
who love to watch video, you want to give that to them as well. So the combination of both.
Sure. Sure.
And what's next for you and your agency?
Well, right now, I thought you'd never ask. Let me tell you. So, what's coming up next is actually November, December of last year. I was beta testing out a new service called the VIP Day. It's a LinkedIn Lawyer Launchpad, is what it's called, and it's actually compressing everything that I might normally consult or coach on over a longer period of time, 3 to 6 months or so, into one day. And people go, well, how can you do that? How is that possible? Well, it has to be possible because what I teach over the course of, let's say, 6 months requires my client to meet with me at least twice a month so that we can check in with each other and we can, I can find out what's going on within the firm and them and any events, anything we want to promote or create sort of some buzz around or invite people into. And what happens with busy lawyers? What happens? Yeah, they have court dates, they have depositions, they have filings, they have deadlines. And so I thought, okay, so if we're not going to meet at all, I can't just make magic out of nothing. I've got to have that touch point. And so I thought, why don't we compress everything? I do the heavy lifting beforehand based on a questionnaire they fill out. And then I create a really sort of high quality, optimized profile and a content strategy and a content system. And I would compress that into 4 hours. We'd have 2 hours in the morning to review the profile created and we do any fine tuning. And then we have about 2 hours in the afternoon where we work on the content strategy. I explain it. I tell them how to schedule it out. So we make it super efficient. We get it all done in one day. So something sort of unique that I've played around with for quite a while and then finally beta tested with a lot of success. So I'm excited about that. I'm still rolling that out right now, but that's the VIP day is something I think that is fairly unique for these kind of services. So
6 months into one day.
day.
How do you do it?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I probably spend anywhere from 15 to 20 hours before we actually meet on that VIP day.
Gotcha.
So the VIP day is not where we actually craft the profile or the content strategy or anything. I've already done that. So I've done all that work beforehand. So it really is a matter of walking through, fine tuning, adjusting, and me explaining the content strategy, why I chose a certain direction to meet their particular goals. And so that's how I do it. So I'm still doing a lot of the work, but sort of out of their sight, out of their mind, and sort of taking some of that burden off of them. And that way, it doesn't get strung out to 6 months. Where if they can't meet with me twice a month, then then we can still get it done, and they then can have access to me following the VIP day for 30 days. So I become their personal LinkedIn concierge for 30 days following, and they get a touch, touch base if they need to every day. But I want to make sure that it gets implemented. So it's not like I want to just hand over the reins and say, okay, good luck, be on your way, right? So I want to hold their hand and I want to make sure it's done right and address any questions that come up after our day. So I'm super excited about that. I think it's getting out there more. Word is getting out there more and more, and so that's what I'm really working with right now.
What kind of advice would you give to an attorney who's unsure about the LinkedIn marketing? They don't know if it's going to work for them or it'll be fruitful. What type of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most common objections I hear is sort of either lack of time or prioritizing, or the uncertainty about the effectiveness of the ROI of LinkedIn. And I can't tell you the times I've tried using LinkedIn in the past, but I don't see any tangible results. I don't want to waste my time and effort on something that might not bring me any business. And so one of the things I do right away is I ask them how they've used LinkedIn in the past. And a lot of times, I'd say like 80% of the time, I'll hear them saying, well, I put a post out there or I posted 5 times this week and I didn't get any traction. And so the number one thing I say is, okay, and that's why it's so important. Did you come back to your post? Did you acknowledge the folks that hopped in there and had something to say? And the second thing I say is, you've got to be consistent. If you post once one week and then you get really busy, you don't post again for another 3, 4 weeks. Um, you know, Not only the algorithm is you're going to be invisible to the algorithm, so you're not going to get good reach. You're not really training LinkedIn to do the work for you and to figure out who is your audience and what's resonating with them. So you've got to be consistent, and you've got to be, you've got to be thoughtful about it. You've got to come back and show some respect to the people that are responding to your posts. So
Hmm.
if you do that, you are guaranteed, and I don't use that word very easily as a former lawyer, but you're guaranteed to get traction for sure. Now, will that traction lead directly to clients? Maybe not, but you have to sort of expand how you approach LinkedIn too. Sometimes it'll lead to enough traction with another attorney, and that attorney then is located somewhere else and says, hey, I have a potential client for you in California. Maybe they're on the East Coast. So these synergies between referrals and partners, law partners, is huge. And so you got to think about, yeah, you're trying to reach direct to client, possibly depending on your practice area, but oftentimes you're also trying to reach other lawyers and sort of get into a relationship rapport with them so you can help each other out. You know.
And I remember hearing about the algorithm of LinkedIn like 2020, 2021. It was like almost like the TikTok algorithm. You could just blow up.
Yeah.
How is it in 2024? It's a little harder, but how much harder?
You know, so LinkedIn came out with two big updates. One of the big updates was they were very, very clear on what it was. They want to see high quality content. They want to see content that reflects your area of experience and expertise and care for offering something of value. So you're not using LinkedIn as a blowhorn, just kind of a bullhorn, and here's my message, here's why I'm so great, here are my peer reviews, and here's, superstar, lawyer of the year. They're really looking to they're determining the quality based on the value you're offering others. And I have to say, the older I get, the more I believe in karma. But this is a karma situation. What you put out there, if it's genuine concern and care and of value to others, it's going to come back to you. And it might not be immediately, but if you keep at it and you're consistent, LinkedIn's going to show you that love. The algorithm's going to show you some love. But what's happening now with the content that goes out there and in connection with AI and ChatGPT and people kind of going overboard with that is that LinkedIn's algorithm is quickly picking up what is sort of templated messaging when it's not your unique original content. It's getting really smart on that. So if you're leaning on ChatGPT to create all your content, good luck with that. It's just people. I mean, other humans sense when it's automated, and so use all these generative AI tools that are out there now. Use them to spark some fire, some creative juices or whatever, but make sure that you put your layer, yourself, your tone, your voice on it, because no AI tool is ever going to get that. Right? That's your unique sound. That's you. So I think that the big update last year was, hey, we're paying attention to the quality of content. It's not just that you're posting 5 times a day, 5 days a week, right? It's actually, you get penalized for that, but it's rather, is the quality reflective of who you claim your audience to be and how you're positioning yourself, and those come together and they say, okay, it looks like good quality. You're talking to the people you claim to want to talk to and that are interested in what you have to say. We're going to give you better reach, and so then your reach, the algorithm goes exponential. It goes wider and wider and wider to a bigger audience. So that's how you earn it, but you have to earn it. You know, rarely shortcuts.
And so they penalize. So they don't want you posting 5 times a
No,
week.
no,
Do
or
they
five
want?
times a day.
Oh,
Five times.
5 times a
No,
day.
no, no. If you go once a day, that's totally fine. And in some cases, I encourage that, as long as it's still high quality. If you're just doing the check a box and you're just putting something out there to see if it sticks, I'd say then scale back to 2, 3 really super thoughtful, high quality posts. And as a matter of fact, if you post more than once or twice a day, you can get penalized. And actually, one post will sort of cannibalize the other one if they're too close in time. So let's say that you find a good reason to post more than once in a day, then what I'd say is make sure that there's enough space between those two posts, 4 to 5 hours at least. Otherwise, one starts getting traction and then it just kind of gobbles up the other one. That's the most recent one. So you want to be a little bit careful about that.
And
Yeah.
what do they consider high quality posts?
So the high quality again is just, are you giving enough value to your audience? So let's say, in my profile, I'm pretty clear that I work with lawyers, and I help support them in leveraging LinkedIn, figuring out how to use LinkedIn, how it's going to fit into their schedule and who they are, and all this. So it's hopefully that's pretty clear, and so they know that I want to speak to lawyers. Is what I'm posting relevant to lawyers specifically? Is what I'm posting going to be of value to lawyers specifically? So if you've carved out, your segment, and you're putting that in your headline, in your title, in your banner, in your positioning for yourself, they want to see that there's no disconnect between who you say you are and what you do and the audience you're trying to reach. If you can connect those two, that gets you well in the way of I think LinkedIn considering that being high quality. Yeah.
Wow, this was a LinkedIn masterclass.
It is, right? Yeah, I mean, and you want to make sure that when you're posting too, that you have a good hook initially, and when I'm careful when I say that, because when I say, hey, use a good hook that really captures attention, what people sometimes do, what I've seen happen is a hook that's just absolutely like shocking. But it's clickbait, and
Yeah.
then you don't follow through in the post, right? So I flip that and I say, let's do some legit bait. So in other words, do a hook, do a great, captivating, sort of contrarian, initial sentence, and usually one max 2 sentences, but one sentence, pull them in. But then don't go off on another tangent about something completely different in your post, right? Be consequential and logical, follow through and answer the question or the belief that you put up there that sort of captivated attention, and explain, why you put that there and how it relates. So that's what I call legit bait versus clickbait, which people get pretty ticked off about.
Really? Why?
Yeah, yeah. Well, because if you have a hook sentence that pulls you in, and then you can't continue reading the post and it's about something totally different, I mean, you feel sort of misled, right?
Oh, yeah, that part makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So you want the hook to be, really good and really sort of captivating, and then you want the post itself to follow through on that, and be at least related to what you use as sort of the the bait, if you will.
Yeah, you probably get punished if you don't follow through. People feel like defrauded or whatever.
Yeah,
Th- th-
yeah. They
Probably
feel
not.
mis.
Yeah,
Sure.
no one wants to feel misled.
No, no.
How, how did you like not find LinkedIn, but find your voice on LinkedIn?
Oh, trial and error. A lot of trial and error. So that, I mean, that kind of goes into a deeper question of, how do you find yourself? How do you find who you are? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And do we all always know who we are in our entire lives? No. It's not a static proposition. We're in and out of sort of stages in life, and I mean, your content and your expression always reflects that as well. So it's a matter of figuring out, how do I speak? Like when I speak to you now, or I speak to anybody, what is the tone of that? What is the voice of that? What is the reflection back to me, telling me about how I express myself? Is it clear? Is it quirky? Is it silly? Is it funny? Is it serious? You got to figure out what that tone is, and once you do, I usually say, before you hit publish on that post, read it out loud and read it to yourself. Does it feel good? Does it feel natural to you? And with lawyers who are, you know, they're very well written, so to speak. So for them to relax a little bit and have more of a conversational tone is can sometimes be a hard sell, but I do encourage that, to just kind of notch down a bit, and as though they're speaking with one of their favorite clients, or best audience, persons, and have that conversational tone rather than sort of a buttoned up, formal tone, because that's really not going to resonate with another human being. And so that's why I say, don't think of the person you're speaking to as a lead or a client. Think of them as just simply another human being you're trying to connect with. That's really important.
I love that. And that's across the board when it comes to
Yeah,
video, any platform. You want
right.
to speak to the person you want to attract.
Absolutely. And so read that post out loud. And if it feels a little bit formal and it's not normally the way you would speak out loud to another human being, then change it. Make it a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more conversational. Have some fun with it.
And are you on any other platforms?
I show up, I should say. This is, I have an Instagram business account, and I do more of my visuals there, much, much shorter, snappier, punchier topics there. So I kind of condense what I might be announcing on LinkedIn if it's my new VIP day, or, people that have been asking me questions about LinkedIn. If it's a common question, I'll sort of recite that question and then respond to it to help that person and 10 others that have similar questions. So I'll just kind of condense that. Put it on Instagram, and I'm not quite as consistent on Instagram because there are only so many hours in a day, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, both for myself and for clients. So this is kind of my watering hole. It's my main focus. So not too much on Instagram. And my 17-year-old daughter always makes fun of me when I try anyhow. So what's the point? She gives me an eye roll and says, "Oh, mom, you can't do that. You can't say that. What is that? That's cheesy."
Yeah. Are you ever going to put out a LinkedIn course?
I actually have a course
Really?
that I created quite a few years back, and it is badly in need of updating. That was about 5 years ago that I created that. So I haven't really promoted that, put it out there too much, because I just know it's one of those things that I have to go back and do quite a bit of work to update. I don't want to put it out there if it's not as current as it can possibly be. I mean, things are always shifting, but so I have had at one point, and hoping to fit the time in to actually update them. But yeah, the basis for it is there. Yeah, this first quarter especially, and second quarter, I'm going to really focus on this VIP day, because I've seen so much success and turnaround in a very short period of time, and people love the focus. Right, I get to focus on them for 4 hours, and they get to feel heard and nurtured and taken care of really well for 4 hours, and that's pretty neat. That's pretty luxurious, in this day and age where things, you get easily distracted. You have like tons of deadlines, and so it's nice when you get that one-on-one time for a longer period of time, period.
And so it's one on one.
Yep, absolutely, one-on-one.
Oh wow.
Yep, just yeah, you, me, LinkedIn, and done. That's the
Yeah.
tagline for that.
Yeah,
So,
your LinkedIn looks very legit. Like when I go on it, I'm just like in awe.
really,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just,
go.
I
Yeah,
hope
it's in awe.
so.
I'm like,
It's
yeah,
got
she
many
does
iterations.
she does it really well.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. I mean, it's gone through a lot of iterations. It didn't, it's been almost 10 years, since I've been on LinkedIn and really focusing more specifically with lawyers the last 5 years. And before that, I was sort of all over the place. I mean, I was working a lot with public agencies, the financial industry, sort of these areas that are heavily regulated because of my legal background.
Hmm.
And so it's only really been the last, I'd say, 6 years that I've super niched down to working almost exclusively with lawyers and law firms. Yeah.
You said earlier you do some marketing for attorneys, and you have to navigate the regulations, what you can say, what you can't say.
Mhm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the things that you have to be careful about is, for example, if they so this is where I have a little bit of an advantage, I think, having a legal background, because if they hire another marketing or business development person to create content for them, you have to be really careful that you're not using, for example, the word expert. That in legal advertising, in our rules, you are not allowed to use the word expert, or even sort of indicate that you are an expert, unless you have a certification or a license in a particular state as an expert in, say, family law or something like that. So there are little nuances like that, and as it stands right now, too, you got to be really careful with the content and copyright laws, especially as AI now is churning out so much content. And there's a big discussion about, who do the original content creator, do they own their copy, their content? And the developers who are creating the AI tools are saying, "Oh no, we're just we're using that copy to create a pattern, or to help others, sort of complement their content." So there's a big discussion. The Supreme Court hasn't come down either way, so that's another sort of sensitivity, and something I have to keep on top of regularly, like almost daily, to figure out what's a go, what's not a go, if we're using any sort of AI tools. But yeah.
And and is this for organic posts or paid content?
No, I don't do any paid. I think if it's done right, I think that organic traction is by far the best. I think it gets plenty, more than enough traction if you're doing it the right way. At least I speak for LinkedIn. I don't know about Facebook and other platforms as well anymore, but I think that with organic, you're getting plenty of traction.
And out of curiosity, like I know when you're running like paid advertisement, the
Mhm.
regulations um, really matter. But for organic content, can there be penalties? Like I feel like organically you could just say whatever you want. I could be
Um,
wrong though.
No, yeah. Well, so it's like I said, you have to be careful about using the word expert, or leading people to think that you are an expert if you really are not licensed, or you don't have your certification in a certain area of law, to use that wording. Um, you've got to be careful too. If you're in litigation, you can't, for example, for images and graphics and all that kind of stuff, you can't reveal too much about ongoing litigation, right? And you got to be careful afterwards too about what you say, and how you say it about a past case. You can do it, not using names, not indicating the people involved, but it also can't be too similar to the case that you litigated, because then people come back to you and say that you revealed too much about sensitive information,
Mm,
stuff like
yeah,
that. They can be a little bit careful about. Yeah,
yeah,
and working with somebody that is a litigator, for example, we have to kind of keep a very close eye on that, because I'll be asking for case studies to provide them for them to provide their audience social proof. But to do so, we have to be very careful that no names or sort of the context of the situation is too closely mirrored in the case study that we're trying to show and make a point of how well it went,
hmm
in that situation.
yeah. You can't be able to be able to pinpoint what case you're talking about. It has to be
Exactly.
broad enough.
Yeah, yeah. But if it gets too broad, then it gets watered down and it's sort of pointless. So it's a fine line between being, not too narrow where it's the people are easily identified,
Hmm.
but not so broad that it gets so watered down that any lawyer could say it. So it sort of depends a little bit on the context and the particular type of litigation too. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, this has
Well,
been amazing. Where
yeah.
can well I guess huh?
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. I know we've been talking for a while. I've been really wanting to get you on, and I'm glad we were able to finally do it. We got to do another one in studio. I'm
I
been
would love to do that.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
gotta do another one in the studio.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything you want to shout out?
I just, gosh, for anybody listening to this that wants a little bit of help, with their LinkedIn, if they want to figure out, what their voice is and how to position that, reach out to me and connect on LinkedIn. I don't want to do like a hard plug for anything, but the VIP day, I have to say, it's good stuff. It will get you far in a very short period of time. But if you have any questions about it, I would love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Viveca Hess. And that's probably the best way. And I can give either free information, or if you decide to do the VIP, we can take it from there. So, yeah,
So
thanks.
if you want to market yourself on LinkedIn, definitely go to Viveca. Did I say that right or
Oh,
wrong?
right. Perfect.
Okay.
Good job.
Pleasure talking to you. This has been another episode of the Louder Lawyer podcast, and we're out. Oh, hold on.